Well, howdy, everybody. How many of you guys have heard of E-Learning Brothers? It's okay, like, be proud, because I am. Be proud. Okay. So probably about half. That's good. What does E-Learning Brothers do?
Articulate story. I'm sure that's not exclusive.
Not exclusively Storyline. Yes, we provide a lot of help. Let me talk a little bit about, I just want to spend a little bit of time talking about who we are, because in your field, it's great to know that you have a resource in E-Learning Brothers. Because you live in Utah, it's great to know that E-Learning Brothers is an employer. So we're really talking about both sides of the house. So we have two different divisions within our company, and the first one is where we got our start, which is templates. So when you say Articulate Storyline, you're probably thinking of a lot of the templates that we have, right? So if you're getting started in e-learning, the template side of our house is a great way. We run like a library subscription that gives you assets to develop your course. So that might be pre-made interactions, that might be cutout people. That's one of our really popular products. In fact, let me show you. I have a slide of that. So these are some of our interactions that we have: click and reveal, drag and drop, matching, so that you don't have to build that yourself. You can just pull it right into your course, customize it, and keep on going. So it helps you build e-learning faster. And we have professional graphic designers that make that. Not everybody's always a graphic designer, so it helps to make you look better in the products you're putting together. And then we also have a really huge selection of cutout people that are in all sorts of different poses that are also already clipped out for you, so you don't have to deal with that when you're putting them into a course. And so that side of our business has grown to just, we're a very big brand in the industry, an industry leader really in what we do on that library side. And it can, how many of you guys have a subscription to the library? Anyone? Oh, good man. Okay, we've got one here. You can get a free subscription, and you can test out our assets, and you can pull them in. We have Storyline, we have Captivate, we have Lectora, we have some other ones too. We have a lot of PowerPoint stuff. So you guys can go and test that out and see how it works for you, and then if you want to subscribe, you can. So that's the first side of our business. The second side of our business is the side that I work for, and that's the custom solutions side. So we build custom e-learning courses, generally for corporate clients, but we do work with some collegiate and K through 12, but generally speaking corporate. So some of what I'm going to talk about today is that, but more so what we'll talk about is just kind of in general. So whether you're interested in e-learning or instructional design or stand-up facilitation or any of that, I think what we'll talk about today will be relevant for you. But on the custom side of the house, we work with some really exciting clients, and we do more than just e-learning. We're really a full-service e-learning shop or learning shop. So we'll do instructor-led training, job aids, videos, e-learning, blended programs. We're not always known for that because our company name is E-Learning Brothers, and so sometimes people don't think to call on us for that. But we actually do provide all of those services. And on the custom side of the house, we've just been winning a lot of awards lately. For those of you that haven't heard of us, if you were to go to the E-Learning Guild, for example, has anyone ever been to DevLearn? Have you ever seen our booth there? Have you ever seen all of our orange? We make a big deal. We like to say that, well, we won't say, but we like to say that we kind of own that conference. So those of you that haven't heard of us, we actually have a lot of brand recognition, not only in the United States, but also globally. We work with a lot of really big name clients that I can't name because we're recording this and putting it on YouTube. But we have a lot of exciting projects. We work with a lot of very cool people and a lot of very big brands. We happen to be located just locally here in American Fork. So part of the reason that I'm here is not only to share a professional message with you, but also to invite you to get to know a little bit more about us. We have a lot of internships and employment opportunities at our company, even though we're smaller. But we don't work a lot with BYU students, and I just don't know if that's because they haven't heard of us or whatever it is, but that's part of why we're here today, is just get to know you a little bit better, help you get to know us. We'd love to hear more from you as you guys are looking for internships or as you're branching out into employment opportunities. So at our office in American Fork, we have internship opportunities for audio, media, e-learning development, instructional design, project management, internships, full and part-time opportunities, and also sales. Our template side of the house hires interns. Our custom side of the house hires interns. And we have a lot of really fun stories from interns who have, in fact, our development manager right now started as an intern. people who have had a lot of career growth, progression, and opportunity through their association with us. We also write blog articles, so you have the opportunity to kind of get your name out and get your words out into the industry. So just a lot of fun opportunities. So I wanted to make you aware of those, and then just talk a little bit about who we are and what it's like to work with us. I like to say that I'm the most corporate person that works there, so I'm the most boring, formal person who works there. Todd Cummings is here. Todd is back there with the orange flame. We're in the e-learning brothers shirt. So he's our general manager over custom. So he came down to get to know you guys a little bit more too. But one of the things we really pride ourselves on is our culture. We're very laid back. I'm the least laid back person there, but most people are very laid. I came from like the corporate space, which is why that's what I'm talking to you about today. Not that we aren't corporate, but we really pride ourselves on having a culture that's fun. A family, like a work environment that feels like a work family. We played foosball there. Someone put a snake on my desk 2 days ago. There's a lot of pranks and a lot of fun that happen there. We also feel like some things that set us apart are flexibility. We have flexible work schedules, so sometimes that's good for people who are in school. We do offer telecommuting and remote opportunities. We have a lot of full-time employees actually that aren't in the state of Utah, so we're very flexible. We try to capitalize on the best talent that we can find. Yeah.
How many employees are with you brothers? How many employees do you have?
In American Fork?
Yeah, well,
How many would you say, Todd? We have probably 55?
Just under 50, just under 50. So we've got 23 on our custom side and then about 24, 25 on the template side.
Okay.
and how many do you have outside of your American Fork office?
Outside of our space. Well, we also have a large contracting pool that we work with. So we have full-time permanent employees and then a large contracting pool. A lot of our contractors are remote, but we do have some, I don't know, a handful, five or less that are outside employees. But we do offer a lot of contracting as well. So like, for example, over the summer we contracted with a student from BYU and he was amazing. He unfortunately decided to come back to school. I'm not sure what that's all about, finishing his education. We wanted him to stay. He was amazing. So we just contracted with him. So we do contract opportunities as well. Do you guys have any other questions about who we are or what we could potentially bring to your table? Okay. So,
I have
Yeah.
another question. What proportion of the employees that you have are people that that actually are doing instructional design as opposed to doing sales and marketing and
Sure.
something?
we probably have through full-time and contract about 12 instructional designers. Yeah.
Do I use this?
Oh yeah, it should have been.
Sorry. What kind of qualities are you looking for or like skills or tools that like we can develop
Sure.
that would make us an appealing candidate for any instructional design position?
Sure, thanks. I'm actually going to talk a lot about that in my presentation, but let me sum that up for you because it's a great question. It's a fabulous question. So if you're looking to get into, and are you talking specifically about e-learning or instructional design in general?
Either. E-learning, because that's what you guys do, right?
Sure, sure. So in the e-learning space, the more experience that you can get, the better. And I like to talk about, he told me that I had permission to draw, and I thought there used to be a marker up here, but now I don't see it. I'll grab this one. I like to talk about the perfect combination of a candidate, which I can never find as a hiring manager. So if one of you were to be this person, come find me. We'll make things happen. Okay? And for me, that's instructional design, e-learning development, graphics capability, and stand-up facilitation. The more of each of these that you guys can build, the more employable you become and the higher your earning potential. Yeah.
So as far as like graphics goes, sorry, like what kind of, like are you looking for like Adobe products or like what are the things?
So typically, so if we want to talk about really specific things, which we should, no, I love your question, feel really good about it, okay? If this is the only thing I answer for you guys, I think our time's been well spent. So, for graphics, yes, generally speaking Adobe, so you're talking about Photoshop and Illustrator, that type of stuff. Rarely would someone in this position be expected to know something like After Effects and the super geeky stuff, but we want you to know enough that if there's no professional media person available, whether you're developing stand-up facilitation or just a PowerPoint, or you guys will see how I've kind of scraped by today, right? So as we go further on, but generally the Adobe products. For e-learning, we're going to be looking at Articulate Storyline. It's becoming one of the better leaders in the industry because it's so easy to use. It's similar to PowerPoint. The problem is it has a higher price point than what you would see, for example, Captivate. We do see a lot of larger organizations are still using Captivate only because of the lower price point that they get, and they want to buy multiple licenses within their company. And so there are still a lot of people using that. And so it's good to know Captivate. I grew up on Lectora, which is a product that's made by Trivantis, and we're seeing that used less and less now. It has a higher learning curve, and it's a higher price point than Captivate. So generally, most organizations now are choosing between Captivate and Storyline. It's not bad to know any of them because they operate on similar principles, and then you can kind of adjust if you have to learn a new tool when you go to a new place. But I would encourage you guys, if you're just going to pick and try to learn something, to probably learn Storyline and then eventually learn Captivate so that you have that in your back pocket if that's what the organization is using when you go. Yeah.
So you've talked about your templates and your custom development a little bit. Do you have an example of what does that look like? What do your products look like? I'm just having I'd like to visualize it a little bit better.
Sure. I'm a little afraid to exit out of my presentation for what might happen, but if you guys go to library.elearningbrothers.com, you can see every asset in our library without having to buy it. And it will show you what all the interactions look like. We have themes, we have quizzes, you can see every cutout person, you can see every graphic. We also have kind of what we call an asset library that'll provide you with stock video, stock music, clip out things that you can download. You can download the Illustrator files and make your changes. There's really a lot to be done there. What I like the best out of our library are these cutout people. And if you go into them, for example, if I were to click this lady, there'd be 200 different poses of her. Sometimes she's mad, and sometimes she's happy, and sometimes she's really proud of you. And that's all really convenient, because if you're wanting to create a scenario or create a story, we have environments as well, office environments, you can pull people in and create those scenarios. Some of them, like the cutout people, it doesn't matter what tool you're using. Others, you can sort up here with templates, you can sort by tool, and see what we have available for Storyline, or for Captivate, or for Lectora. Any other questions? Okay. So if you are interested in learning more about us or reaching out to us, you can reach out to Jessica Diamond. Her email is jdiamond@elearningbrothers.com. Or if you guys know somebody who's looking, or just to catalog for the future, she runs our recruiting, so you can reach out to her. Okay. So let me talk a little bit about who I am, not because it matters, but because it feeds the context of what we're about to talk about. So when I selected what I wanted to come speak to you about, what I really thought about was the collection of experiences that I've had. I've been in the industry probably about 17 years, serving in a variety of capacities that have always been training related. And I've been called upon really in all of these sectors. I wouldn't say I live up to the task in all of those, but in most of those I try. So I've been an individual, I've been a trainer, I've been an e-learning developer, an e-learning designer, a peer instructional designer, a training manager. I've managed instructional design globally, I've run teams, I've built teams, I've done a lot in the learning space. And this just talks about some of the different industries that my clients have been in, whether I'm working directly for that company or I'm working with them in an outside vendor or client capacity. And what I've chosen to talk about today is really a conglomeration of learning, of trends that I have seen with people who are transitioning into the corporate space as instructional designers. And that may be somebody who's coming from like a K through 12 or collegiate background who has a lot of teaching experience, but they're moving to corporate. Does that apply to any of you guys? No, not really. Okay. How many of you guys are working in this field already? I don't know if I did that. If I did, I'm sorry. Okay, about 5 of you. And how many of you would be working in this field for the first time? Okay.
So for some context, this is the this is the seminar that people take their first year of program, so a lot of them are new. in the
So you're new to
program.
the program? Okay, great.
A lot of them. Yeah.
Okay. So, okay, so some are in and some are out. So what I've noticed is some particular trends. This is me kind of coming to you and saying, this is a little bit what the real world is like, and I want you to be prepared, because I can't change that, but you can change how prepared you are for it, how you handle it, and how you adapt to it in order to be successful. I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of master's program graduates that have all come to me in different stages of preparedness, different stages of how much work they had done before versus what they were being asked to do now, and I have noticed trends over time, and so that's mainly what I'm speaking to. So I've organized this in the form of what I call surprises, because sometimes these things, once you transition from school and you head off into the corporate space, these are things that surprise you. And the reason I want to talk about it, have you guys ever seen these Pinterest fails? Okay, this is my life. I love to bake. And I always think, like, this is how it's going to turn out, and then this is what I get. But what's the difference, right? When we start on something, and this is very much how it feels when you're in school, right? You're like, yeah, I found something that jazzes me, and I want to make a difference, and you're thinking very much along these lines. But the actual application of what you're learning here matters. How you choose to apply it within a specific context, and sometimes more specifically, what you choose to apply or not apply can result in unexpected and undesirable consequences. And so that's what I'm here to do, is to help talk about some basic things like let the cake cool before you frost it. Just some of the things that people find that they run into as they get started. So the first surprise is that value is a matter of perspective. We've definitely worked with folks in the past who have felt like, hey, I spent all this time getting an education. I'm ready to go. Like, I've been in school for all of these years, especially once you've been through a master's program, and I'm ready to go. I'm ready to hit the ground running. And they come into an organization and they feel like, hey, I'm super qualified. And yeah, you really are. You have a lot of education, you've been well prepared. But what they sometimes fail to recognize is that the value that you're being judged by is not your resume. The value that you're being judged by is the value that you bring to the organization through what you can do. And so the connection between what you know and what you're doing is critical, because that's what people are looking for. And let me give you a couple of examples from the perspective of a hiring manager who's evaluating you for an employment opportunity. So I will have people come who have nothing to show. They can't give me anything, so they don't have previous work experience to show me. They do have a degree, but they don't have any previous work experience. I had one person in particular who all she had was an example task analysis about how to change a tire and a job aid for how to change a tire, and that was all she could show me. And the issue that's going on in the market right now is, especially since 2008, everybody's being asked to do more with less, and that includes your hiring managers, who are being asked to get by on less and less headcount. So when they're looking at you, they're thinking, and this is why I bring this up. So for example, I had to build an entire team, and I had a headcount of 4. And I knew e-learning needed to be one of it, but I needed a lot of people just as general instructional designers as well, and I was going to get one e-learning specialist. So I was looking at these e-learning people, and I had a couple guys come in that were really strong, but they didn't know how to do instructional design. I was always going to have one of the other 3 design the course and then pass it to this guy to build. But he was great with graphics and he was great with development. And I thought about that, and I thought, I only have 4 people. And if I'm going to be held accountable to results, what's the best way for me to get those results? And I realized I needed to find someone who could at least do this, even if he couldn't do this. And so I kept looking, and I eventually found somebody. And actually, we've developed this 4th quadrant. So he's one of the most employable people in 3 counties, in my opinion, which is great. But you have to remember, your hiring managers, they need something to show that once they hire you, that you're going to be able to produce the results they need. And you've got to help them see that through being able to talk about real experiences and showing real samples to them. And guys, if you don't have anything from school that you think you can show, or you haven't been able to work anything else, go do something. Just make something up. Find something that you're passionate about and create something around it, whether it's a PowerPoint, an instructor-led training, a mini e-learning module. You have to be able to show something. It's a big deal to people. Yeah?
how often do you have people bring portfolios to you?
Not enough.
Okay.
And if they don't bring them, I ask for them. In fact, the way that I'll usually do things, and this is just a hard lesson I've learned over time, because I've interviewed hundreds of instructional designers, and I've gotten to the point where, as part of the recruiting, I'll tell the recruiter, ask for their samples first. I don't even want to see a resume unless it comes with samples. Because to me, that's the only way I can see, that's the only indicator that I have of the type of work that somebody's going to produce. And in some instances where I'll interview somebody who doesn't have samples, I'll actually ask them to go build me one. And some people who are motivated will go do that, which is awesome. But the problem is, we're allowed so few hires that we need to feel good that you're the right person. And the best way for us to see that is to see something that you've done. So consider that. If you don't have something, go build something. But what we're looking for is we're looking for people who are ready. One of the things that's real tough is to hire somebody who needs a lot of coaching and a lot of hand-holding and a lot of, because we're being asked to do more with less, everyone's really, really busy. And so of course people know that you're going to need an onboarding time, and of course you're going to get some training, and of course all of that. But the more you can try to show this person that you're actually ready to go, oh yeah, I'm familiar with that software, I've used that before, right? Oh yeah, I've done a project like this, here's an example. The more you can do that, the better your chances that you're going to get in the door. I mean, you're a graduate. I mean, you're going to show up in the recruiter's feed. You're going to show up on the list. But then you've got to deal with the hiring manager, and this is what they want to see. So I have a slide here, just some things to think about. So what can you do? Now, get as much experience as you can. Yeah.
Okay, so one thing that you said kind of is making me pause a little bit, because I think I've seen this in other places too, that just having a degree makes them stand out in your list. So do you have a lot of people applying for positions who have no instructional design training at all?
Some. We'll have people who come from a teaching background, like K through 12, or sometimes collegiate, generally not, but sometimes K through 12, who are kind of wanting to switch over into adult education. Yeah, so we have that sometimes. But what I'm trying to say on this previous slide is a degree really matters, and it gives you all of the background information that you need. But on top of it, if you can't show or convince a hiring manager that you're the right person, things could end there. Yeah, and one of the biggest barriers we see, and everybody knows this, well, how am I supposed to get experience if no one will give me experience? And what I'm telling you is, you guys have the capacity to go do all your own projects. Create training for your family. Create training for church. Whatever it is. I actually don't care. I actually just hired somebody who had created a scout guide, like for new Cub Scout leaders or something, and it showed all the events through the year. And what is this event? What is my responsibility? When should I start planning? She's done a great job organizing it, and it showed me she had the transferable skills that I was looking for. Even though she had not done this job before, it showed me she had the skills, and I hired her. You know? So you guys can solve that problem just by building your own stuff. Yeah.
So it's on the slide again. Could you remember what, and you got it there, do you remember what ILT stands for?
Yeah, instructor-led training. Yep, and this is referring to this. The more that you guys can build in any one of these makes you more employable, because people, again, trying to do more with less, if they're looking at you as an individual and they think, gosh, this guy in the green tie, I get 4 for the price of 1. I get 4 for the price of 1. This is amazing. Of course I'm going to pick you over, these other people. So if there's only one thing you remember, continue to build your skills in each of these 4 quadrants. It makes you more and more and more employable. Because we'll have some specialists that come, but they're not as versatile. And what a lot of organizations need is versatility. Yeah.
So the skill set for instructor-led training, do you mean developing materials to be used in instructor-led training, or do you mean their charisma, their ability to facilitate?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'll tell you too.
Their people skills, their communication skills.
Yes. Yes. And let me tell you why. Even if you are never asked to facilitate a class, you need those skills to confidently work with clients, with subject matter experts, with high-level stakeholders, directors, vice presidents, CEOs, people you're interviewing for your analysis state. All of that really matters. And so when people have weaker communication skills, we start to worry about putting them in front of clients or stakeholders. So that helps, but it also means if you're great at presenting and communicating yourself and putting your thoughts together, that you could also, let's say that you're at Adobe, or you're at eBay, or you're at American Express. Well gosh, this guy's great, he can develop e-learning. He can do our instructional design. If we had to pop him in a classroom, we could. This is amazing. You know, and then you're in the door. There was another hand, yeah.
Yeah. So if you get applicants that don't have a degree, but they have a good portfolio, are they hireable?
Yeah, I'll take them. I'll take them right and left. Because as a hiring manager, what I care about is that someone can add value to my team. I'll take someone without a degree for sure. Yeah. Good questions. Other questions? Okay. Now, I don't want to minimize the value of a degree. But I do want to emphasize the power of experience and the power of being able to add value. Okay. This is my favorite one. So, one of the things I've noticed as people transition from the school environment to the work environment is that they're asked to do things really fast. And sometimes that can be hard for them, so I want to prepare you for that. I'm going to prepare you for that through a story that happened to me. So this is me interviewing for a company that's about 30,000 people strong. They put me through 7 interviews. 7 separate interviews. I'm in an interview here with a stakeholder he's going to be my customer if I get hired. And he says to me, how are you going to make sure that my people get the right training? How are you going to make sure that that training actually makes a difference? And I gave him a textbook answer about analysis and learner analysis and all this stuff. And I thought, yeah, this should sound pretty impressive. I mean, this guy should know that I know my stuff. And he says to me, that's all great, but sometimes that analysis is going to need to occur from 8 to noon, and I need you trained in at 1 o'clock. Can you do that? And I thought, what's going on here? I tried to answer that truthfully. I'm like, well, I don't want to lie. I'm like, I mean, I guess I could get some basic information. But what he was trying to emphasize to me was he needed speed. He didn't want to hire somebody that was going to tell him it was going to take 6 months to do a learner analysis before he could get results, because as my customer, he's responsible for the bottom line financials of the company, and he's being held accountable every day on calls. Why are these metrics bad? Why are these metrics bad? Look how much money we're losing. And if he's evaluating me, he's asking, what value is she going to bring? And am I going to have to wait forever? One of the things that I've really had to come to understand, even in just the recent years of my career, is the power of speed. When you guys go to Jiffy Lube, how long do you expect it to be if you're going to get your tires rotated? 30, yeah. Oh, you're positive. You're a good guy, I like you. He says 20 minutes. I'm usually thinking 30 or 60, right? But let's think about NASCAR professionals. You guys know that not only can they rotate tires, but they can check fluids and a million other things in 12 seconds. That's the difference between a professional and somebody at Jiffy Lube, who is still a professional, but a different kind of professional. People today are looking for a pit crew. They're looking for people who know what they're doing and can execute on it quickly. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how you can get there. But that was a surprise to me. A lot of times when you go to interviews now, they're saying, hey, we're a real fast-paced environment. And people are like, oh yeah, okay. But sometimes we don't understand how fast-paced they really are and how quickly you need to turn things around. Let me give you guys some examples. A lot of times, in my experience, I've been asked to create a 30 to 60 minute learning experience in 1 to 2 weeks. Let me give you that as a benchmark. So sometimes when I interview people and I ask, well, how long would it take you to do something like this? And they tell me 18 months. And I've had that. I've had people say 2 years. I've had people say 18 months. In the corporate space, generally speaking, unless you're in a super big initiative, most of your deliverables are going to be turned around in a matter of a couple weeks. And I don't want that to scare you. You can totally get there. You just need to be prepared for that expectation and then know what you need to do. And one of the things I talk about, and I don't know where it's at in my slides. Let's see what's next. Is it here? Okay, let's talk about this. This is usually the paradox that you're caught in. People want, I think this is a funny graphic actually, I just found it when I was putting this together. They want it fast, they want it cheap, and they want it to be great. So you're going to have no budget, you never have budget for graphics, you never have budget to do fun tchotchkes in the classroom, you know. You've just somehow got to figure out how to make it cheap, make it awesome, and get it done really fast. This is called the Impossible Utopia here in the middle, for those who can't see. The Impossible Utopia is what you feel like when you start. Because you feel like you have to deliver in this space. And the truth of it is that you don't. And the faster you can figure that out, the better. The faster you can learn to adapt to what your client, stakeholder, or boss is asking for and what they care most about, and then try to shift away from the rest, the better you'll be. I'm going to talk in a minute about what I call the Invisible Rubric, and I'll talk more about that. But the way that you do this, and this is what I've had to tell a lot of people who come out of school without a lot of experience. In school, you learn, let's say, the 100 steps to instructional design. Here's how it should be done ideally, and that's what qualifies you as an expert, and it qualifies you as a practitioner, and that is awesome. That's the minion cake, right? But sometimes work feels a little like that bottom minion cake, and the reason why is because we have to figure out how to contextually apply what we know. You guys, I could talk to you about this all day, but I only have 50 minutes. So working within those constraints, I had to decide, well, what's really most important? That is a simple example of what you'll be asked to do all the time. There's 100 things you could do, but the question to you as a professional is, pick 5. Pick the 5 that you know as a qualified expert are going to matter most for your learner, are going to matter most for the results of the initiative, and do those. You can do those in 2 weeks, and everyone's going to be thrilled with you. But people struggle when they first start because they feel like they have to live here, and it's hard for them. And I'm telling you, you don't have to live here, you just have to work smarter. And you can do that because here you're getting prepared with the 100, and you're going to need all of those 100. You just won't need them all for every project. Does that make sense? Okay. Speaking of time management, this is one of the, you guys are kind of up here talking about time management, and please don't think I'm oversimplifying. Everyone I know has struggles with this, and so I'm trying to prepare you for the basics. The first one, you're always going to be asked, when can you have that done by? Almost every meeting ends with, when can you have that done by? Any client is going to ask you, when can you have that done by? One of the biggest struggles that people have when they start is they don't know. They don't know how long it's going to take them. Part of the reason why is, well, like when you're doing projects in school, it's like, okay, here's your semester project, it's due in April, and you're not thinking to yourself, well, how long did it take me to go through the initial content? How long did it take me to do my first draft? How much time did I spend on edits? You know, and because you don't know that, because you're not asked to pay attention to it, it's really hard to give estimations to people. And so then you're kind of pressured. I'm new here, I want to do a good job, what can I do? And so you'll give a time that's probably a little optimistic, and then you're going to run into some barriers, then you're going to have to ask, then you're going to tell them that you can't meet the timeline. So one of the things you can do now, and I've got this on a slide, but start paying attention to how long things take you, like in terms of hours. In fact, it's not even a bad idea to clock yourself. There's free programs you can use. I'm trying to think off the top of my head, what is that program called that I used to use? I'll think of it in a minute. You can actually clock yourself and code it to different tasks and start to get an idea for the length of project that you're working on. How much does each of these tasks take me? And it gets you able to estimate. This is critical. I don't care what business you're in. People are always going to want that from you. And when you first start, you just don't have the data. Then you're going to build a personal schedule. Although something you're usually thinking about an end product and an end deadline, best practice for you is to build yourself a sub-schedule. When am I going to have this accomplished? When am I going to have my first draft? When am I going to do my edits? When am I going to do this? And shift it forward. Do all your work sooner and leave yourself a few days at the end. That accounts for hiccups. It lets you sleep on your work and come back and revise it. And anything else that you might need so that you can hit a deadline. The other thing that I see a lot is people spinning their wheels, people who get writer's block, people who get really picky about their first draft. Everyone has a different thing, and you might already know a little bit of yours. Figure out what that thing is and work to overcome it now. If you have a hard time being too picky about the words in your first draft, I worked with someone who had this issue, and I'm like, set a timer, you have 2 hours to get this done. Don't care about what you're putting down, just get it there, because it's so much easier to come back and edit it later than to hem and haw, and he was taking the majority of his schedule time just to do the first draft. So figure out what that is for you, and figure out ways to avoid spinning your wheels because it sucks away your time. Raise your hand if you need help. This is one thing we see a lot of, is people just don't want to ask, and they don't want to let us know that they're having trouble. But raise your hand so other people can help you. Always finish early, and then leave time for others. This is a big surprise too. Like in school, it's just you, and it's the professor, and you're going to get that done, and you're going to hand that thing in. In the corporate space, there's about 50 people that want to see what you've done, and they all want to give an opinion, and you have to fix it all before you're actually done. So you have to build that time in too. So here's some things that you can do. We talked about start timing yourself, look for opportunities for efficiency in the way you work right now. That'll help you later. Build good habits. Get in the practice of being disciplined right now. Don't be thinking in terms of, well, what excuse could I use, or could I get an extension, or could I, because that's not going to work for you later. So get in that habit now. And also, go back and rethink some of your projects. Let's say you have a school project that's a month long. You get it done, you did an awesome job. Go back and look at it and ask yourself, how could I have done that in 2 weeks? If I would have had to do it in 2 weeks, what would I have done differently? Start to think about those strategies now, and it'll prepare you more for the future. Here's one that I love. Stakeholders do not tell you how to succeed. Tell me if this looks familiar to you. These are familiar comforts that you're probably used to in a school environment, right? When's it due? What will I be graded on? What do you expect from me? What format should I use? Where can I get help? Can I see an example of something else that's been done? These are common questions you ask as you try to get your bearings around what's being asked of you. Let me give you an example of the world I live in. And this is an extreme example, by the way, but it's funny. Spencer, can you read that for me? This is what a client asked me to do.
So they wanted to start with a strong introduction, like Johnny Cash meets Jack Welch, and then at the end, it should be more like Willie Nelson. I want it to look like the commercials we released in the California markets, but I feel like it should be more sleek like a Lexus commercial, but solid like a Ford, tough, gritty.
What do you think? This is a true story. Todd's smiling because he knows what I'm talking about. And so we're talking about this, you guys, this was a very high level, I don't know if he was a vice president, but this is a high level guy. And what you'll find is that your stakeholders don't know how to tell you what they want because they don't play in your space. So they're going to tell you what they know, and then it's up to you to kind of figure out the rest. And this is something people struggle with when they first start. Like, well, what format should it be in? Well, how long do you want it to be? And a lot of times you're left to just make that stuff up. You just got to figure that out. You got to do some creative writing. So let me talk a little bit about how you survive that. One, you've got to learn how to become as independent as possible. And again, it's not to say that people won't help you, but everybody else is very busy too. So you got to start thinking, how can I Google for some inspiration? Do I know anybody who's in this field? You got to start getting creative about how you can get some ideas and get some information to come in. Keep generating solutions. One of the things, I want to talk about this too, listening and taking notes. For me, this has been one of the key things that's been able to set me apart as a professional. I type 140 words a minute, and I take notes. If I'm on the phone with a client, I'm taking notes. They're not going to repeat themselves, and I'm not going to have to remember or wonder later what they asked for. I'm going to have it in black and white. And when I start to get confused and spin my wheels in what I'm doing, I'm going to go back. I'm going to look at it. What did they tell me was important? Jack Welch, Lexus, Ford. So you know what I did? Went out to YouTube, started looking at Lexus commercials, started looking at Ford commercials, started looking at their commercials. Because what else am I to do, guys? I mean, no one's going to hand me the answer, right? So I got to figure this stuff out. Take the notes, keep going back to them, keep generate solutions, but make sure those solutions are tied to requirements. This is where we see a departure. Once someone starts working on a project, you tend to go down a rabbit hole. You always have to come back and re-gear yourself to what the core requirements of the project are. Make a draft. This is, again, these things sound so fundamental, but I promise you that they're not. Sometimes when you're sitting there wondering, well, what should it look like? What's good enough? The fastest way to get someone's opinion is to put something in front of them. What do you think of this? And now you can start to get more information out of them. Oh, well, I didn't need it to be that long. Great, data point. Well, I kind of thought it would be more, great, data point. Don't be afraid to put a draft in front of somebody because sometimes that's the only way to get them to articulate what they want. And you don't want to sit there and work on a Sistine Chapel and then hand it in and find out that it's totally wrong. So you need to be comfortable with feeling as fast as you can to get the feedback. And it's easier for people to give you feedback if they have something to look at. And this last part is one of the biggest secrets of our industry, I feel like, and it's creative writing. So often you guys are asked to make things up. It's okay. Get comfortable with it. Don't plagiarize anything. Be cool. But you're going to have to come up. You guys, I can't tell you the amount of sales courses that I've just written from my background in communication and other sales courses that I've done. Because it's kind of like, remember in Jurassic Park? This is probably a bad example. but in Jurassic Park, they didn't have the whole DNA string. Remember this? Am I in the wrong audience? So they didn't have the whole, this is an older movie. They didn't have the whole DNA string that they were pulling out of this amber for the mosquitoes, and so they had to supplement it with frog DNA to make the whole dinosaur. That didn't end well for them, but it can end well for you. You're always gonna have to supplement some little things. People aren't gonna hand you everything you need, either from that extreme example that I gave you, right down to, well, I don't have any content for this. The people who succeed are the people who figure that out, who fill in the gaps, and who have. Let's see, where am I at on time? Okay, here's the invisible rubric. So I told you that your stakeholders will not tell you how to succeed. What I've learned over time is that there is a rubric. No one talks to you about it though. And I've given you some examples. Timeline. So the stakeholders represented here, I'm over here. What I found over time is that the stakeholder and myself were in very different places about what project success really was. So what I've worked to do over the years is to close that gap by always talking about the same types of things. Okay, let's talk about timelines. And they might say, this should only take a couple weeks. And I was thinking, oh, this is going to take me a couple months. So now I know how to adjust. On the front end, not after I fail. Same with this, quality. He's thinking, I just want this done, it doesn't need to be perfect. And I'm always thinking, this needs to be my Sistine Chapel, this should be my finest work. Now I know I need to adjust down a little bit. Visuals. He's thinking, this needs to meet our corporate branding guidelines. By the way, super picky. The larger the organization you're in, the more picky they get about those visuals. And I'm thinking, oh, surely I can take care of that myself, okay? We're not calibrated. Same thing down here with collaboration. You'll notice a lot of your stakeholders want to have a lot of involvement, and the other ones are like, just call me when it's done. And there's no wrong answer. It's just knowing what they expect and knowing how to meet their expectations. But the key is you won't know unless you ask. So a lot of times when you first get an assignment, you're very tempted to just say, oh, okay, great, I'll go work on that. Stop. Have some of these things thought through before so that you can say, for clarification, I want to make sure I meet your expectations. Let's talk about a few key areas. Let's talk about timeline. Let's talk about quality. What's the project going to look like if it's successful? How much money you're expecting to spend? Whatever it is for the job you're in, I think those questions will be a little different, but that's what I call the invisible rubric. And the other thing you have to remember is you are always the advocate for the learner. Your stakeholder might be saying quality doesn't matter. Your stakeholder might be saying we don't have time for practice. They may be saying a lot of things that you don't think are best for the learner, and that's where you have to come in and be a trusted advisor, which I'll talk about in a minute if I have time. Question?
Sorry, how did you say that quality one in a nice way that you can say to a client?
How would I say it?
Yeah.
Okay, so it would depend on, just before I came, I was having this conversation with somebody. It would depend on what it is that they're looking for. And generally what I say is I don't use you language, because you always feels like it comes with a point, right? So I'll say, generally, speaking from best practices or industry standard, what we try to do is X, Y, and Z. The benefits we see from that are this. Some of the cons we see are this. But over time, it has shown, so that's something for you to consider, right? The way that you'll talk to a client, your boss, or a stakeholder changes over time. The more value you show, the more you become a trusted advisor, and the more candid you can start to get with them. A lot of times when you first start working with someone, it's just very, hey, get this done. I don't care what it looks like. You've only got 30 minutes. And my favorite color is pink, so make pink. And sometimes you're going to have to lose that battle so that you can win the war. But over time, if you can show that you know your stuff and give suggestions without bossing them around, overpowering them, looking resistant, they'll start to trust you. And then the conversation shifts. And the conversation starts to become more, well, what would you recommend? Well, what do you think is best? And that's when you start to win them over and you start to gain more influence when you're adding more value. And that's where you want to be. Because one of the big pulls in our field is the difference between being an order taker and a trusted advisor. You guys aren't putting the time and the money into a master's program to be an order taker. You don't want to do it. You may have to do it a little bit while you're building relationships and proving your value in an organization. So be prepared for that, because that's hard for people. But over time, you'll become a trusted advisor, and they won't treat you that way anymore. And then you'll be able to build your minion cake. You'll be able to do that. Great questions. Any others? Okay, I got 4 minutes left. Let's see. So here's what you can do. Recognize task anxiety. Task anxiety is when you're first assigned something and you feel really overwhelmed. And you're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to be able to do this? And suddenly you forgot everything you learned in school, and you don't think you can do it in time, and I'm going to get fired, and that's task anxiety. That's going to happen to you. You guys, that hasn't gone away from me, and I've been doing it a really long time, and I've done a lot of these, and I still feel that way. I'll talk to Todd, and I'm like, oh, Todd, and he's like, calm down. You know, task anxiety is a real thing. You just have to recognize it's going to pass. So let that period pass. Don't make any decisions. Don't drive. Don't, because you're emotional, okay? Let that go. Recognize it'll go away, and then start to think about how to bite the elephant one step at a time. The reason I mention this to you is that a lot of people, when they're interacting with clients or stakeholders, will let that anxiety drive the conversation. And they'll start to say, I can't do it. That's not enough time. I need more people. I need more resources. Your clients don't want to hear that. If you do need it, come to them later. Say, okay, that's great. Let me take that, consider that, and get a plan together. And then buy yourself some time to have a freak out. Okay, then get your stuff together, get a plan, and then go back to them. That's part of how you become a trusted advisor, rather than looking like an emotional person that doesn't have a lot of experience. Evaluate your friction points. Where do you often seem to need help, and where can you learn to become independent? And prepare for meetings. Don't show up to meetings unprepared. Always be there to take notes. Always have your questions. Be thinking in advance. What do I need to get out of this meeting? Write that down and have an agenda. That way you can make the most of your time. A lot of times you don't get tons of access to stakeholders and other people. You might get 1 hour with them, and now you've got to go do a month-long project. So be prepared for that. Take copious notes, learn to type fast, and learn to fail fast. We talked about all of those. Okay, I think I'm going to go ahead and see what else is in here. I'm just going to summarize the rest of this because I always have more than I need. But surprise number 5 is that your stakeholders have questionable taste, practices, and ideas. They've said a lot of interesting things to me over the years. And this is where we talk about that difference between an order taker and a trusted advisor. This is what the conversation sometimes sounds like, and this is what you want to shift it to. And this is a great space to live in. Oftentimes you're treated more as a trusted advisor when you're working externally. When you work for the company, they treat you a little bit more like this, but you can still flip it. And you can flip it through figuring out what they need, building a relationship with them, giving them what they want, and slowly working to build that relationship. You guys can take a picture of this if you want. The big thing here is know your research. You can't just say that's not a good practice. If you can come in with some research and show you know your stuff, that's part of how you can build it. You also need to learn to speak with confidence. If you cannot sell what you're communicating to them, they're not going to buy it, they're not going to come to you for more. You also are going to get a lot of feedback. This is one thing that's hard for people to adjust to. I didn't even put all the people on here you should be prepared for. But again, so many people are going to review what you have, and it might seem overwhelming, but you have to learn to treat feedback as a gift. Otherwise, you can't get better. And the more you adjust to it and incorporate it, the good news is that's the less feedback you're going to get over time, which is awesome. And here's a conclusion. Get as much real experience as you can. Make smart decisions with your limited resources. This is the way that you can stand out from other people. Figure out what your clients want and give it to them. And eventually, over time, after you build that relationship, give them what they should have asked for. Earn respect through delivering value and becoming a trusted advisor. Those are my main messages. And I made it. 12:50. So.